The people have spoken, and we're doing the worst eliminations from each Total Drama season today. Total Drama's had countless eliminations over its seasons, which is only natural for a show like that, game is game, some of which were incredibly satisfying to watch if said character deserved to be kicked, while others are so insanely out of left field, you can't help but wonder if the only reason they were even kicked was because they couldn't think of a proper reason to get rid of them if the season's winner was planned from the get-go. So what I'm doing for this video is picking two characters from each season that got done the dirtiest, and depending on the season in question, I'll throw in a third honorable mention. If you wanted to see another video similar to this, YouTuber Plushroom Kingdom TV did his own video about bad eliminations about a week ago. Really good stuff if you haven't seen that yourselves yet. Now, starting off with Island, with unanimously the most infamous elimination, maybe even in the entire series, is Lashauna's. Lashana did very well in every single challenge up to that point, befriended all the right people to the point where Heather was the only person actively against her, and was just a very entertaining character all around. So for her to get booted by no kind of proper vote-off from the other remaining contestants was totally silly. Leaving it up to the eliminated contestants is one thing, but the way Chris turned it into some weird game where he'd count someone saying her name as a vote regardless of the context was very weird. Sort of funny, I guess, but I'm sure most Lashana fans were not too thrilled with this episode. Every now and then I'd hear people say the reason Lashana was booted in this specific episode was because her voice actress, Navi Edwards, had a family emergency. Not trying to say that isn't true, but at the same time, I'm not sure where folks got that information from, because outside of this one tweet from someone who never gave the source in the replies of the tweet and nobody else interacting with the tweet gave a source, I just couldn't really find anything, because if someone else out there has more concrete proof that this was the reason Lashauna's character had to leave, then great, but I just personally haven't been able to find anything other than this. The other character I'm going to give second place to is Courtney, believe it or not. Yeah, she wasn't the nicest camper in the world, but she did get screwed pretty blatantly by Harold this season, slowly building up her relationship with Duncan and earning the trust of pretty much everyone else on the Bass team due to Duncan already being really friendly with DJ and Jeff, while Courtney and Bridget were on decent terms as well. Harold was the only one getting the short end of the stick. In a way, I can sort of see where Harold was coming from, because that much torment from somebody who's basically a complete stranger can't be easy to deal with, but at the same time, he could have just rigged it to where Duncan got booted so Courtney wouldn't have to become collateral damage, but it is what it is. Honorable mentions going to Lindsay. Her elimination was one sort of similar to Lashauna's in the sense where there was no official voting from other campers, being forced to leave immediately after coming in last place for the challenge that episode. What made it hurt even more was the realization she allowed Heather to beat her when Heather never even considered her a friend the entire time. Her telling Heather off is cool and all, but there's only so much that can fill in her heart when she screwed Lindsay out of winning the whole thing. On to Total Drama action. Lindsay once again got screwed very hard this season. I'd argue what happened to her in action was worse than Island, because this season up until that point was doing an incredible job with her character development. Not only was she more entertaining than ever, but her leadership skills and general self-awareness had become a lot better compared to Island. So for her to accidentally vote herself off in her elimination episode simultaneously felt like the most in-character and out-of-character thing ever at that point in time. And this season was so perfect for someone like her too. She deserved to at least be in the top 3 this season. Owen's first elimination from action was actually pretty bad too, in my opinion. Maybe that's a weird take because it's one of those things where it's a given that he won't win 2 seasons in a row, so he's, gonna have to leave at some point. But the way it was done still felt pretty bad. Courtney returned to compete in Total Drama in the same episode and was allowed tons of special treatment thanks to her lawyers constantly threatening Chris with a lawsuit. One of those perks was she was completely immune from being eliminated the same day she returned. So even though every other person on the grips voted for Courtney that night, Owen went home anyway because Courtney's sole vote was for him. But truly diabolical. And when it comes to World Tour, Noah's elimination didn't feel great. His whole suspicion towards Alejandro felt a bit out of left field in my opinion. Obviously he had every right to be suspicious because most of the eliminations from this season were because of him. The problem is Noah showed no kind of distrust towards Alejandro prior to this episode. He's smart, but it would have felt more fitting if Noah was expressing his distrust of Al to Owen if the teams had already merged, or if we'd seen a confessional of Noah talking about him prior to saying it out loud to another character. Combining all that with Al suddenly getting Tyler of all people to get into cahoots with him to vote Noah off felt quite forced. Not even saying Noah had to win the season or even make it to the finale, but this elimination could have had a lot better setup to make it feel less cheap. Harold's early elimination this season was pretty bad too. Like, yeah, he did cost his team the win, but I feel like someone as smart as Harold shouldn't have fell for Alejandro's smooth talk so easily after everything he'd been through in the previous 2 seasons. Even after all that, his team still didn't actually vote him off. DJ was the one who was going to be booted because of his animal curse, but Harold decided to leave the competition of his own free will because he felt bad for costing his team the win.
I have brought great dishonor to my ancestors.
This season's getting an honorable mention as well because there were a lot of cheese eliminations going on in World Tour. Gwen's in particular was very unfortunate to me. It would have felt less silly if she just got voted off normally by costing her team a challenge or something. Sierra and Courtney had already been gunning for her since the Greece episode, so her losing a challenge would have been a good excuse. And Heather would have been a guarantee too because she was very adamant about winning challenges this season. Yet this episode made it to where Gwen and Courtney's votes were tied, so Gwen loses a koala-feeding tiebreaker because she's allergic to eucalyptus, and that was something that was never said or known by us until right before the tiebreaker started. Like, come on, dude. For me, it felt like most of Revenge of the Island's bad eliminations happened before the merger. Brick's was the most unfortunate of all. Brick was not only a very honorable and heroic character, but incredibly funny when need be. Gone way too soon. The rest of his team threw him under the bus because he saved the lives of Mike, Zoe, Anne Maria, and Cameron. Like, okay, sure, they're the other team, but they were literally going to die from nuclear waste exposure if Brick didn't step in. It's GOAT behavior right there. It didn't deserve to be booted for that, even if it was technically a traitorous move. A Silent B is getting second place for me. That guy was carrying the ever-living fuck out of the Toxic Rat team during those early stages, but because Scott saw him as an early threat and he was the main antagonist of the season, B had to go as a result. It wasn't even a good setup though. Like, how is B's melting mirror that was obviously messed up by Scott being blamed on him with others actually believing it? Like, if it was sabotage the whole time, then why did the team even agree to use it in the first place? B wasn't even anywhere near the mirror when it tilted. None of it made sense to me. He sort of got to hold the L for not properly defending himself, though. I understand his whole gimmick is to not speak and just use his actions to speak for himself. However, in a situation like this, you gotta call Scott out on his BS. I guess keeping up the silent treatment was more important than $1 million. Did I forget anybody? No? Okay, we're good. Yeah, Dawn's getting the honorable mention. She has to. I didn't have her higher because I personally didn't grow as attached to her character the same way a lot of others did. That doesn't change the fact her elimination was dumb, though. She was the most pure of heart contestant this season, yet when it came down to who to believe was stealing whose belongings, Scott or her, the rest of the team sided with Scott since he isn't allowed to get booted early. This is maybe a controversial take, but Duncan's elimination is my least favorite from All-Stars. I've said 1,000 times now, the wasted potential of expanding upon his history with Mal/Mike was one of the worst things All-Stars ever did, so the fact that his character shifted from that to becoming so focused on people seeing him as the scary delinquent again was not my cup of tea at all. Some probably think his elimination was a good thing because they were tired of seeing him act like this, which is totally fair and understandable. I guess it's one of those things where I was hoping he'd start focusing on Mal again if he stuck around longer. Heather's easily the second worst, if not the worst for some people. It's one thing to not have the immunity stature on her person at all times, but to get screwed over by Alejandra of all people, oof, definitely not a good look. She's way too smart to be making plays that stupid. We know she knows better. But speaking of the devil, honorable mention is going to Alejandro for this season. People have been gunning for that guy from the get-go since they knew how big of a threat he could be, but damn did he go out in the saddest way possible. Why did Mal of all people have to be the one to take him down? At least make it someone from one of the older seasons, man. Mal had been acting even more suspicious than Alejandro that season, but because it's Alejandro, nobody wants to believe him anyways. I did an entire video about how bad his elimination episode was about a month or so ago, so if you wanted to see a more in-depth dive into that, it'll be on the screen right here. Pakatu was a bit of a hard one to choose because I just don't care for most of the characters in that season, so a lot of the eliminations either felt good regardless of the context, or I was completely indifferent due to said lack of care. But I can't deny Jasmine's elimination from the final four was really bad. Similar to Lashana, she was completely dominating for the entire season, quickly establishing herself as the team's leader and being the main reason those guys would win any of the challenges, so her elimination episode decides to have Sugar accidentally tip a tree over onto her, a tree that apparently had some kind of adhesive superpowers because instead of just climbing around it or from under it, Jazz tried carrying the tree while she walked. We did all that just to keep Sugar around for one extra episode, solely so she could do her dumb Crabtree song.
Sugar.
She's not even a good villain, dude. Just make her lose this episode and Jazz lose more fairly in the final three. It feels like the only person who deserves second place for this season is Max. Max literally did nothing wrong in his elimination episode. Scarlett 1000% deserved to go home, but Max ended up as collateral because he still wanted to act all evil and Chris was tired of all the evil, so he made Max leave with Scarlett. Max was never even that evil, though. I mean, he tried, but he failed miserably, making him the main comedic relief for the season. That was kind of his little shtick. I used to not think he was that funny, but warmed up to him over time. All these seasons love to do at least one double elimination now. It's just one of those things where it could have been handled better or a different pair of characters could have been gone entirely, but oh well. Devin and Carrie's elimination from the Redonkulous race season was a very unfortunate one. When I watched this season for the first time, I thought for sure these two were going to win or at least make it to the finals and officially become a couple in the finale. Problem was, Kitty ended up accidentally knocking Devin off a cliff during one of the challenges, making him too injured to compete. What's even sadder is that it was a non-elimination challenge. All they had to do was just exist and not get hurt and they would have been fine. Devin could be annoying at times, times during previous episode when going through his breakup grief stages, but he became a lot better after each passing episode, so it sucked to see him go out like that. And Mickey and Jay getting the runner-up spot in the season for me. Overall, Redonkulous Race was pretty good when it came to proper eliminations. This was not one of them for me. The twins were very fragile boys who were slowly but surely getting stronger each episode, and when it felt like they were about to reach their peaks in one of the challenges, Emma intentionally manipulated them into getting stage fright so Noah and Owen wouldn't get eliminated, resulting in them completely tanking the challenge and going home. Those little guys deserved better. Reboot time, final stretch, fellas. Z's elimination was the worst in the first season, no doubt. Another amazing character gone too quickly for dumb reasons. His biggest weakness was being too much of a people pleaser, so he agreed to 2 alliances, helped both of them, and then got thrown under the bus by everybody when the truth came to light. Not sure how these guys didn't realize Z had zero malicious intent behind making these 2 deals. He simply just doesn't think that far ahead. It's not his style. Now, despite this episode itself being great as a whole, the Hockey Bros eliminations followed a similar set of events to Devin's, where the 2 of them were too hurt to continue. At least their friendship grew more thanks to that terrifying experience, but I wish they didn't have to go. At least the second season went a lot more in both of their favors. Damien gets runner-up spot here. This guy finally starts to care about the game, and his own plan to get voted off before this change in mindset completely backfires on him. The straight man archetype can be hit or miss for some people, but Damien was one of the better ones in my opinion, genuinely entertaining and quite relatable in many ways. Felt like quite a bit of wasted potential making him leave this early, leaving him with no money and a broken spirit. The reboot's second season decision to boot Nichelle early again was very questionable in my opinion. This season was constantly trying to remind us how Nichelle had become a better person both physically and mentally, now capable of doing her own stunts and moving on from Hollywood for the time being. But apparently the moving on from Hollywood thing was total BS because all it took was Julia to forge a fake contract for Nichelle to quit the show 5 episodes in. Feels like she at least deserved to make it to the merger before something like this happened. It's very weird decision making. Second place going to Damien, again, 2 bad eliminations in a row for this guy. This season he was at least voted off more fairly, but got cheated out of his own invincibility statue because Julia stole it off screen. She did a lot of stuff off screen this season. At this rate, she's gonna dethrone Blackbeard as the ruler of off-screen feats. And to stay on that topic, Bowie gets the honorable mention for the season 2 of the reboot. I get he was a bit of a villain last season, so people thinking he cheated makes sense, and, Julia framing him. It's the fact that Julia was the one to rat him out. Like, why would they choose to believe Julia still? It's not like she was trying to hide who she was again this season. These characters should be very aware of how ruthless she can get, so I don't know why they just trust her so easily. She also robbed us of more Rougebel content, man. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think the worst eliminations are and why, as well as, any other video ideas you'd like to see in the future. I'd love to know your thoughts. Huge thanks to my gold tier patrons, BFP4, Lunar, Izzy Torium, Draconis, and London Morse. You guys' support really means the world to me. Don't be a stranger to leaving a like down below and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.